Good morning, everyone. I think that you're all with us now. Thank you very much for joining. Dov will not be joining us today. He has other commitments, so please forgive us. Before we get to the crux of the matter, as we say, I wanted to pass the baton for now to David Pollock with JCRC, just in case, because I know that the clock is running out on the grant application deadline, and just in case if there are any particular questions that are popping up last minute. David obviously has tremendous expertise in this, so maybe David, you can offer some observations that you're already picking up during this particular grant period. And then we'll see if you would like to ask any questions. Please just put them in the chat.
I have no specific observations. I'm looking at the names here. Most of you are very, very experienced in this process and applying for grants. I assume that you continue to do so. The questions that we've gotten are all fairly common. Does anyone have any new questions? If not, Rabbi Waldman is here, so we can proceed to our regularly scheduled programming.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very, very well, and we're very, very grateful that you've been able to find a moment to speak with us. I know that you're extremely busy, and we always have quite a few participants that already have been receiving awards and now have either one or several awards that they're looking to spend. Some of these awards are obviously from the federal grant program, some of them are from the state grant program. And so as much as Dov and myself have been sharing both our own experience, but also the general experience of the JCRC team on how awards are, packaged up into RFPs, then how they are bid out, and how contractors are then identified and awarded. I know that you and I have worked a little bit together. I felt it would be a fantastic opportunity for the community to hear a little bit from you, since you recently have started going through the process of your own security upgrades. I would like to start off by just asking you, just maybe give a general introduction about your organization, how you arrived at the awards, which awards you received, and also what were the starting points of your security upgrade project once you received the awards.
Thank you very much. I may first take this opportunity to thank you for your assistance, and it's my pleasure to be here to share a little bit of my experiences, and if it can be of help to anyone in the community, then I'll be very pleased and happy. Our facilities houses a synagogue and also a school, a Jewish school. What we applied is with a grant to be able to put in a security system, which will be closed circuit television monitoring, also a burglar alarm system, I would say security alarms, access control, and some other, and announcements to the public address system in order for emergencies to be able to use that. Those were the items that we were seeking to get funded. The way we started is also we filed the application. We needed to have a security analysis, the typical requirements to get the award. But I guess now that the crowd that we have here is, already past that, because I understand that you, as I mentioned, they got already some awards. So we had to go to the next process of getting the bids. To get the bids we put it into the local paper and ran it at least 3 times that we are looking for bids in those areas for the items that are enumerated, plus whatever extra things that we had, a little bit like bollards, which we are now debating if we'll put it in or not. But at least that was all in the advertisement. We waited to get bids. We got some, but not enough, because we need 3 for each category. So we reached out and through your offices to try to get more people to bid for it. Then also we need to have the 30% or a little bit more for minority or women-owned businesses. So we had to check off that box to see how much we can get from that, what percentages we will get. And hopefully we are pretty good with that, and hope we will close the deal, the bids soon. The main challenge is, but I see, and that's where I would like to point out where you have been most helpful, Ms. Ilyan and the others, or you can get it from other sources if you're familiar with the line of the products, is when you get a bid from someone, from one of these vendors, and then you get another bid from another vendor, to be able to compare apples to apples. Very often they use jargon that the typical layman of equipment, of security equipment, is not familiar with. And how do you know that when you compare it, that both of them offered something similar? That's number one. Number two, the quality of equipment. How do you know that the quality is the same? One may be charging a little bit more, but you get, for that little bit more, you get something that's double in value because the product is just more of a brand name, is more reliable, and won't break so fast. How do you know that all components that's necessary to make, let's say, the security alarm work is included? Do you need still to get an extra computer for example, to record for the closed circuit televisions, or is it included already? Is it the backup system, how it works? So this is something which I found to be a little bit challenging, which you have been of help to be able to come to the conclusion to decide which is the best bid, and therefore we can justify why we go with that vendor A as opposed to vendor B, and then to compare it one with the other, so it should be apples to apples, not apples to oranges when we look at the bids. And then I guess I would like to have a little bit more input, and probably I'll be seeking some advice to get someone when during the process when it's done. And then it's about to make sure that it is turnkey, meaning it's all ready to be used when the product is delivered. And we don't have extra expenditures in order to get it up and running.
Thank you very much for explaining kind of where you've started, how far you've progressed. Just to humor everyone, please share, if you don't mind, how many times you had to go back and correct the vendors that were bidding about things they were missing, or some, just to make sure that you arrived at a proper comparison. Do you remember how many rounds it took to just get the right information in your hands?
Summertime, I think it took about 3 or 4 rounds. Some of the vendors just dropped out, didn't care to correct the things. You just gave a very general bid, which was so vague that was hard to know exactly what they're going to be delivering for it. And when we asked them specifics, and even sometimes when you look at it, even the number of cameras one put in, and why do you put in so many? We have so many else compared to what the other one does. So we went around, it was a few times, and I hope that we are now towards the end of it already. And I hope so, and I believe so, I should say. It was quite it took time. It took a lot of time and effort.
Again, for everyone's kind of understanding of how much time approximately all of this took, do you remember when we started interacting? And then I guess I want to say we can draw a line, let's say 2, 3 to 4 weeks ago. Approximately how many months have we been at it, trying to get to, to build up your comfort level for awarding the project?
I think it's about at least a half a year or more, maybe. Approximately. I can look up the dates from when we started with the ads, with etc. But I would say approximately at least a half a year. Do you know, Delia, do you have a better track?
Okay, so I appreciate you sharing that. I just want to say that for everybody's benefit, that I joined kind of during your process. We didn't start out together.
Right, correct.
So you had to take up quite a bit of work on your own. If I recall, what happened was that you were just still finalizing, you've done your ads. You started receiving some bids. I remember that your ad process didn't really produce any viable bidders. And so with the assistance of JCRC's team, you've been able to get some bids coming through. I think that is when we had met and started working together.
I think it's about a half a year, approximately, more or less. Give or
Right.
take a little bit.
That,
But
that
before that, I had a meeting with Dove and the others and with Adam. Okay, I met with them was before that, before you joined, but that was it. So it's a process. We have to be patient, but hopefully in the end, we reap the benefits.
just for everyone's benefit, can you share, because you have multiple scopes of work, right? How challenging
Right.
was it to understand where to go for different types of contractors, for different types of bidders who could accommodate all of the scopes of work that you needed to implement?
Let's say we have doors, reinforcement of doors, which is one type of a bidder, and to put in the closed circuit television system, the monitoring system, that's another person. Usually it's not the same expert or company that will do it. So we have to pull them all together and to keep track. And we had, like, say, different grants with different categories. So even now, it's still, I'm trying to finalize certain things. I'm cutting out from one bid award that we got. We say, okay, how much do we need there? And also there's sometimes the possibility, which you need, I guess, the permission from the state grant supervisor, if you are allowed to shift from one category a little bit to the other, because when we gave in the bid, we had an estimation what we thought it's going to cost. And then when we get to actually a bid, we see, oh, it's a little bit different. So we were awarded more money and we don't need that much. But in the other area that we asked, the other way around is true, that we need more and we have less money. So these are all different vendors that we have to see how to accommodate their quotes and accommodate, of course, our needs, what we need, and make it to fit in the grant award. So we shouldn't have any headaches later on.
So as I understand, you've taken not only the process of soliciting bids, working with different bidders, but also having to negotiate with the grant rep for reallocations. And we've had that question arise quite a few times. Can you give us a little bit more context as to how receptive and how supportive the grant rep has been when you approach them for having to reallocate your funds as part of the award?
The one we have, I would say, was very receptive. He didn't sound to make it any issue. He said, no problem. They would need a explanation, which is not difficult to say. The reality is proven once we got the bids that we don't need that much money for this items, for these security items, and so we have extra, but we need more for the others. Can we switch it? Let's say if I would need lighting, and lighting was not included in the original one that we had so much money, can we do that? Or that bollards, do we want that or not? Bollards will cost much more. So he was receptive, I should say, and I was appreciative of that. But of course, I did not get it yet in writing, but I would like to get it in writing before we finalize it, like the email form or whatever the process is. But when I communicated with him, it seemed like to be very much amenable to it, to change around a little bit within the scope of the overall security grant.
And another question I wanted to ask you is, what was your approach to identifying which bidder is better than the other? I understand price is always of significant concern. You want to make sure that you do not go outside of the boundaries of what you've been awarded. But I'm sure there were other elements that helped you identify which bidder was better than the other. How did that work out for you? And what kind of additional factors did you consider?
First of all, pricing, just what they give the prices, does not mean that one is cheaper always and then the other one charges more in the bid than the other, but you have to see what are they giving for it. And so you have to see if that is correct, that one is more, because could be the one that sounds the price a little bit more, let's say a couple of $1,000s more, but they give you something much more value, and that's why it costs more and it will serve better your needs. And the other one, you will anyways gives you less, charges you less money, but you will have to add on more money at the end because you won't get the finished the finished product what you want. But also in the process, very often we see how receptive they are and how they cooperate with you with the questions, the answers, are they accommodating? And I took it as a little bit of a sign that if they are not very receptive during the time, the bidding process, when you don't have yet with them the signed agreement. So once you signed with them already the agreements, how receptive will they be with you because they want business. So now it's their time to put their best foot forward, to show that they are cooperative and they're trying to accommodate your needs in order to get your business. If they don't accommodate when we ask for reasonable things, which is, I'm not saying to ask something that's out of the scope, but then I felt like that they'll just give me a contract and then they'll drag me along by providing the services that they said that they will. I don't know if they'll do it. So we can sometimes get a feel of a vendor, besides the issue which we looked at, what are they giving the products, which I had your expertise, the brand names, what kind of materials they're giving, is how I can trust them and feel comfortable that their word is a word. And even if they give it to you in writing sometimes, there's an old saying, a signature is as good as the person behind the signature sometimes. But that's something that is more of a nuance that you have to, each one individual grantee, when they negotiate and they talk to them, have to have the feeling of it. They have to get references to see how accommodating are they. Would they give you a reference that for prior jobs that they did and how their customers were satisfied. So those are the things that I considered when I selected the bidders.
Rabbi, it's all fun for me to ask you a lot of questions, but I don't want to hug that to myself, if that's all right. We do have a few questions that just arrived, and I wanted to ask you if you can reply to those. One of the questions that we just got was, before you got your grant and everything, who performed the security analysis? Was it performed by a self-assessment, if you will? Or was it a third party that helped you perform a threat and vulnerability assessment?
Okay, the final threat and vulnerability was done with JCRC. We had them come down. We did the initial analysis to sit down what we think we needed, but it was done by a third party.
Thank you. And then another question that I see here. So you mentioned doors, right? And
Right.
Definitely a significant pain point for the community because of lack of vendors, and especially when it's MWBE, and also the technical details associated with procurement of doors. We had a webinar where I just decided to demonstrate the table of chemical elements, and I said that that's probably more simple and straightforward than what a single specification for a lock or a frame or a door looks like. A question I see here, is it necessary, or was it necessary in your case, to provide architectural drawings specification in requesting a bid for doors, right? So in this case, a person is asking about 14 gauge steel doors, frames and locking mechanisms, including a panic bar and so on and so forth. The issue is that, of course, some clients, some facilities choose to hire an architect, which is an additional expense. How did this work out in your case? And did you have to hire any third parties to arrive at the bid for the doors that you need?
We did not hire an architect, a third party, to draw any sketches. What we did is we had some pictures which we posted, but we put the owners and the vendors, we had at least 3 bids for the doors. They came down themselves, took the measurement, took their own pictures, and gave us the bids. And then the question was, do we need the primary doors, the main doors, secondary doors? And then we whittled it down to compare the bids and see how much budget do we have available, how much funds, and what we really need. But we didn't do it with a third party, but that was done by the vendors themselves, and they were satisfied. They gave us the quote a bit.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to ask you, in the process of your interaction with the bidders, at some point, did you make a choice to disclose what are your award ceilings, so that they understand that, yeah, they could bid $100,000, but you just don't have that money awarded to you? They have to design a solution that would fit under a specific ceiling of your budget. Is it something that you explicitly shared with the bidders?
I did tell them, roughly what is my ceiling. I did sometimes not give the exact because, and also I didn't want to share, which I didn't, one bidder, what the other bidder gave, that I never did anything because I wanted to be like, a sealed bid, as they say. But I did tell them an approximate amount of what I'm looking for. So they will know that I cannot go over the budget. So, and why am I saying approximate? Because as I mentioned earlier, we can shift sometimes a little bit from one category to the other. And also I didn't want to disclose exactly to the T. So I gave them more or less a ballpark, which I think worked out well.
To your recollection, what were technical requirements that you did provide to the bidders for doors? What did you tell them you needed?
It was, I don't have it in front of me, but I guess you and others, we did tell them what kind of a duration of security we need in the doors, that it should be resistant to forced entry for how long. I don't have it in front of me to be able to tell you. So, but we did tell them the general security level that we needed. I know that someone would offer, I'll give you an example, to be resistant for 3 hours of attack, right, of ramming the door. It's not that level. We don't need it because by that time already, hopefully 911 will have arrived already. So it was at a certain level that we looked at it to be, I think it was about a half an hour or so, that it could be resistant to withstand the pressure, or maybe even less than that, or approximately that. That is with what we worked. And I guess we used your good offices, so to speak, in order to come to a understanding what we need to be secure enough that when we get a quote, to know, okay, this door fits our needs and will help us, to enhance security in the building, and therefore it's a legitimate bid. And let's see what they offer and compare it to the other bidder.
Thank you. And I'll just add here that for doors, we do realize that to actually design and implement a door that meets, for example, stringent government standards for forced entry, that could be a process in and of itself. And so therefore, each door unit and frames will obviously be quite costly. So what competent bidders offer is they offer engineered solutions. They may not necessarily be aligned with any particular government standard, but they feature certain controls as part of the design of the door that help increase the time it takes to actually defeat it. When I kind of stepped in to help, we had conversations with bidders about all different features of the doors that they were recommending, right? For example, we started with an aluminum door, and then we ended up with a door that had steel lining through the entire body on the inner part of the door, right? We also started out with regular hinges, and then we ended up with a continuous concealed hinge. Right? We looked at one type of locking, and then we ended up with locks that were a little bit more sturdy, that would certainly offer a better deterrent and also give you more time against the attacker if they were trying to circumvent that particular door. So I do recognize that even as we were discussing this, that there were still quite a few technical elements that were well above what you typically go through, and it's not the information that is readily available to you and your organization. That's where I also want to point out that David just posted a primer that the JCRC's CSI team had put together with a very competent door hardware consultant that walks you through how to reinforce doors, what should that look like, and what other features you might be asking about when you were engaging with different contractors.
Includes hinges and materials, the kinds of things that Ilya added. It kind of lets you, it was written to educate all of us about what we should be thinking about. And again, CSI is here.
Somebody just asked where the primer link is.
I just reposted it.
There you go, David. Thank you so much. Rabbi, just again, we want to be respectful of your time and grateful that you've shared your experience. So let's take a step back and let's say you get awarded another grant. Okay. And let's say, because, you can always keep improving security of your organization or any other facilities that you might be looking after, right? And, typically you'll have multiple security improvements. So they could be, again, security technologies, door hardware, fences, lighting, whatever, right? Having gone through this process, right? Both with my assistance, with the assistance of the JCRC's CSI team, and also for the most part on your own, right? What have you learned? How are you thinking about making the process next time to be a little bit more efficient? So what do you think, what tips would you offer to our attendees today?
At this point, I know more how specific I can be when I ask for the bids, not to have to go through so many rounds, maybe with the vendors. If we would have it more specific and say already, I know this and this I need precisely, because some of the vendors, when they came in, they decided how many cameras they said they want, where we put the cameras, what kind of a system to put in. So until we whittle it down to have it more uniform, to know, okay, and we need X, Y, Z, so then we can compare one bid with the other. So now we have already that experience. We know already what to expect, how many responses we will get initially from that, where to be able to get more bidders involved and to ask them to present us with some of their quotes and the bids. So I guess it's probably is going to be a faster process, hopefully, and also a more educated process, which is we learned, from experience.
I appreciate that you have gone through this process. We always tell the community that we apologize in advance that, for you having to wear so many different hats and having to be responsible for so many different things besides security, and then having to step in and manage those projects as well, having to upgrade security of your facilities. And also before then, having to apply for grants and gather so much documentation and so on. So we're trying to support your efforts and to help make them a little bit more efficient, to help reduce the stress and so on. But we appreciate that it obviously is a challenge in and of itself, besides everything else you have to do. And that kind of goes to all of the members of our community who join us and who we work with, regardless of what kind of organization they represent. I also wanted to add that the soft points that you brought up about how you evaluated vendors also came to be quite significant, because, like you said, vendors sometimes will either be very cooperative and they will try to understand your needs, and some vendors just are ready to kind of prepare something that's cookie cutter. They basically put it in the client's lap, just wait to be awarded. Whereas the client doesn't have the right information in front of them through that very poorly put together documentation to make an informed decision. And so it seems like, again, I want to reiterate what you said before, is that there were probably 3 to 4 rounds of your engagement with the bidders, having to tell them, with a little bit of my assistance, that, hey, you weren't specific here. You didn't include all the different components and subcomponents of the system. And maybe you missed something there. It's those points that are not very obvious sometimes, while the prices may be very, very close, right? One bidder may be missing a significant chunk of the system, which is what happened in our case. And we had to actually go back to one of the bidders and say, you missed it, how the system won't work. But another point that I wanted to just finish with. So now you're headed very close to signing a contract, right? We had conversation that there will be additional clauses that you will add into your contract with the vendor to make sure that you protect yourself from any sort of poor delivery, bad installation, or partial installation of the systems and technologies and hardware that you're going to be getting, right? Can you give a little bit more of an explanation of what those clauses may be? And I'll be happy to help if I startled you with that.
Billy, I have those wordings, and I mentioned it to the vendors, the ones that I think we're finalizing with. We'll put it in. It didn't seem like to have any issues, but the exact wording or whatever it is, I don't have it in front of me. But the gist of it is that no surprises later on. meaning once we get into the process, don't tell me, oh, I didn't see something and now I have to add something, and it has to be turnkey to work for what we needed. In other words, it shouldn't be that we are left with not only another half-baked product, but not even something baked that's 90% or 95%, but it's 100% complete. And what you stated, that is what you will deliver. And sometimes we have it, when you deal with a vendor and a bidder, they tell you, oh, but I didn't know this is going to happen, that is going to happen. And then we are also tied in with our budgets because we are not for profits, and also within the confines and the constraints of our bids that we got from the state. So that is what I remember, the gist of it. And I guess, Ilya, you will be able to fill in more if I missed something.
You've done a great job here. And I just wanted to clarify that, for example,
Thank you.
If a bidder is bidding on an access control system, it has to be what you said, turnkey. So you own what you're proposing, right? If your system midway through the installation appears to be missing some items, it's on you. You cannot come back and say, I forgot to include them. You're bidding a completely working system that I, as a client, should be using, right? So the clauses we discussed for the contracts kind of protect you and shield you from any sort of mistakes down the road, or any finger pointing that contractors like doing, or any change orders that originate from the contractor's mistake. Clients sometimes do need to make changes to their projects. Okay, if it's a client-generated request, then of course there might be a change order and the additional fees are justified. However, if it's a mistake that the vendor made and they say, well, we forgot to include these pieces of the system, it is completely on them and they should not be coming back to you for additional costs. And I just see here a question, I suppose it's a New York inspired questions. Vendors agree to no change orders. So I suppose it's rhetorical. We all understand that New York is full of contractors who love to charge midway through the implementation. There is a way to introduce a concept that if you came, and I know that in your case, Rabbi Waldman, bidders came to your facility multiple times and you welcomed them, right, and you said, please come. I want you to see everything so that you don't miss any details. Once that's been done, it's on vendors to deliver a complete product, a complete system. Let me see if there's one more question here. Do we need to tell the state grant rep that we are gathering additional clarifying info from contractors after the bids have been received? This person's experience is that they are very concerned that we not give any contractor a competitive edge by speaking with them individually. So how did it work out? Were you in this situation, Rabbi Waldman? Did it occur on your side? And how did you manage that communication with the bidders?
I communicated with each bidder individually, but not, I didn't disclose who the other bidders are. So I don't understand. In other words, if I had a bidder A and I had a bidder C, B, and C, A didn't know about C and B doesn't know about A. You know what I'm saying? So that's for us internally to keep, and then we compare it.
Were there any concerns from the grant rep as you were keeping them aware of where you are with your bid process?
No, they gave us, we have the timeline, but when we have to deliver it, I didn't have any issues with that. We are still within the time frame that they gave us when it's called the grant performance end date when we have to. So as long as we are within that window, I guess I don't see it being an issue.
What we generally recommend is that people keep a log of all their contacts with the various bidders. What New York State is concerned about is that everyone has an opportunity, that you've said in your spec letter, as Ilya said, come on down. We want you to see that. One thing that is often recommended is you have a bidders conference. So that everyone comes at once and gets the same information. But if you need clarification, keep a log of that. You called ABC Cameras and they visited on February 30th and you discussed everything with them. We think that as long as you can show that you did not give anyone a competitive advantage by your log, And by reaching out and giving people the opportunity to ask questions, you're in a good position. It's always good to keep your program rep apprised of what's happening, that you've been open. These are the specs that you've arrived at. So as you refine specs, all of the bidders should know about any refined specifications.
We had a final, which we call it, I guess that's what you want to refer to, a final round of a bit of best and final, I think we called it. Right? Best and final, that after everything is all said and done, we have, okay, this is what we need, so address those items. And we sent it out again to all the bidders that we notified them that gave us any bid. In any area, here it is. I guess, Ilya, you want to mention something.
Yes, exactly. So I appreciate what you and David have shared just now. I also want to say that having had experience on professionally managed projects, such as the UN and many other facilities around New York City, here is how this works. If one bidder is asking you a question to clarify something, you never reply to that one bidder. You take a standard letter and you say, without naming the bidder, one of the bidders asked this question. Our answer to this question is this. And then you send that answer to all the bidders. So it's always communication to all bidders. Now, if you need to issue your own direction, right, you don't issue it to just one of the bidders. You issue it to all bidders. And like I said, if they're asking questions individually to you, which is called the request for information process, which is, either typically before they submit their bids, if one of the bidders asks one question and then another bidder asks a different question, you just aggregate it in a spreadsheet. Right? You provide your answers and then you send it to all the bidders at the same time. This is why when David mentioned that I like the process of pre-bid conference, and I also like the process of giving bidders a little bit of time to give their requests for information to you, and for that period to take about a week to two, right? So that you can receive all that. And there's a deadline after which nobody should be asking any more questions. You give them an equal opportunity to ask you any questions you need, and then you close it, and then you provide your replies regardless of who asked what question. You list the questions and you provide your replies, and they go out to all the bidders on the project. Now, obviously, keep in mind that you're dealing with multiple scopes, so sometimes it's going to be different groups of bidders, but the process is pretty much the same. It's not terribly labor intensive, but Rabbi and I, we worked with a smaller group of bidders, considering the types of scopes he was doing. We managed it so that all bidders had the same information, so there was no misunderstanding. So I'm sorry, that was quite a long answer to this. We are now at 45 minutes past the hour. Rabbi, I'm very, very grateful for you having shared your experience, having given your thoughts. I want to see if there are any additional questions that we're receiving now. So somebody's asking, what if you already responded individually? That's all fine. You can always correct yourself and just say, hello, everybody, all the bidders. We received a question from one of the bidders. We want to make sure that you all are aware of our reply, and then correct the situation. Before award, that's never an issue. If
you've already rewarded a contract, the question is, you're stuck with it. We can't tell you how to cure it in retrospect.
So after award, it becomes a different ballgame, because if that means that you're already changing the scope, or there are some changes to your agreement and to your project parameters, that is when you need to appreciate one thing, that you've already awarded it. And so you already have a winning bidder, and they are your contractor of choice. So you should be dealing with that organization. Any other bidders that did not win, you certainly need to make them aware that they didn't win and why. And I always welcome and I work with clients and I always tell them, please tell the bidders that didn't win your project why they didn't win. What were some of the issues you found that made you gravitate to a different contractor, so that they understand how to improve for the future. Okay, I guess that should help answer your concern. I have a few more questions that are popping in the last few minutes. Should we share bid documents with the state rep? Do we need to get state feedback approval on vendor bids before deciding on a final equipment proposal? My impression has been that they are more interested in procurement processes and not on specific equipment selection. Am I correct? May I address this question to you, David, if that's all right? I have my own answer, but why don't we start with you, David, if that's okay?
They are interested that you've done a fair process, a fair and open competition is the phraseology that the state uses. That's on one hand. On the other hand, so long as you have been in constant contact with your rep, you'll know if you're falling into any trap. For example, we already awarded a contract, but we told, one bidder one thing fairly and another bidder another thing fairly rather than telling everything to every bidder. They can guide you on that. They're very interested in the process. They're very interested in your bid matrix. We've discussed this before. You have to have a document that shows what weight you put on each part of the process. It can be 50% of my consideration will be price. It can be 10% of your consideration is price, but 60% is responsiveness and reputation, the references and reputation. You can make up your own bid matrix, and you're going to have to show how you followed your bid matrix. That's what they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you if you've been fair. For example, we get a lot of questions about, we have System X here and installed, and we just want to extend the system. We have someone who already knows our system. Well, you can't put in a specific brand, but you can say knowledge of existing equipment and requirements to upgrade existing systems. So that's how you kind of work with us. We can help you come up with the language that gets you to fairly and openly get you to the result you need.
And I know, David, what you just said is exactly what Rabbi Waldman is implementing. Rabbi, do you want to say a couple of words about how you are preparing documentation to then share with the grant rep?
I think I got from Dove, I got from another source, and I like it, is a matrix that evaluates, and you can say it has different categories on it. Like you said, of course, you could put this, you put on why you put price, you could put it in quality, you can put in service and responsiveness. You can go as your personal experience that you had. Like, for example, one vendor I had that made an appointment to come down and to meet us. And then he didn't show up, didn't even call. And then he said, I thought it was another day he was supposed to be. So look at your email, it was that day. So then we rescheduled it a second time. And then he said, that person that I was supposed to come was not available, and we have somebody else in that style. Okay, you know what? Take off that item from my bid. Okay, I'm not going to bid on that item. But I have the other item that I bidded on for the other component. I'll bid, and so you have that. So why don't you give me that? But I didn't say anything, but it wasn't a good reflection. I made an appointment. You were responsible. And then you make another appointment. You said you're going to come down and don't tell me. Okay, so make believe I didn't bid on that item. But it shows your modus operandi, I should say, that how you work and so responsiveness, responsibility. So that is also an item that we can use in the matrix. So this is weird, but I'm still finalizing those matrix. And I guess I would like to run it through a little bit to someone, another pair of eyes to make sure that we dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
I think that you're trying to show something in relation to one of the questions. I just wanted to share.
This looks familiar. Yeah, familiar.
Yes. This is a bid scoring matrix that we use. And David, you want to say a couple of words?
It's just Dove's matrix with an example: experience and qualification, positive references, itemized breakdown. What Rabbi Waldman talked about, that, some people were so vague. That's a good sign that I don't want to deal with them. We've had people they're replacing installed Dawa or Hikvision systems, that are now forbidden so you can replace the existing systems. And then the same vendors come back. And my question is, Ilya, how many years ago did you tell me about Dawa and Hikvision?
Well before they were banned by the US government.
But you told me there were problems. So vendors should know that there were problems. If that vendor then installed it once in my building, do I want them to come back? The cost within budget. There's a question out there about MWBE. MWBE is only required for the state hate crimes grants, not for the federal grants. That's another process, and we already have done a show on MWBE. Rabbi Waldman, how did this work for you?
Not all the bidders were WMBE, but we had some, and we played it into, the calculus that we need about 30% of them have to be. So we may probably have more than 30% at the end that qualify, and that are women-owned or minority-owned businesses. But basically, that's also part of the calculation of the requirements. So if you, I guess that plays a role in the matrix. That's also one plus, put it this way. So why you awarded a certain bid to someone.
Thank you. That's great. In the interest of everyone's time, we're just at the end of the hour. I know that there are a few more questions, and I think David will have a recording of those questions. And I think that they're more related to the CSI team in general than they are to Rabbi's experience with his current projects. And I know that we're also trying to include a couple of links to additional presentations. For example, Mitch, thank you, Mitch, for helping, just shared a link to a very helpful video on MWBE requirements and how to make your choices. And yes, we do understand that it's a tight market. There are not many MWBE certified integrators in the security space. We will be happy to help you both to review your requirements or to soften the process of locating some of those integrators, some of those contractors. So please reach out to your CSI regional security manager. And with that, just if there are any final comments from the JCRC team, David, anyone else, if we're all done, I apologize if we didn't get to your question today. Please forgive us. We'll try to review them after the webinar and get back to you. If we don't, please do reach out to us. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Rabbi Waldman, thank you very, very much for being with us today and for sharing your experience. This video will go onto our website, to JCRC's website, will be recorded. And certainly if the rest of attendees choose to review it at a later time, just to refresh their memory, please let us know if any questions arise later on. Okay. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for your attention. Like I said, you know where to find us. We'll be happy to support you going forward. And Rabbi Waldman, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And that's the minimum that I feel I can do to reciprocate partially. Thanks a lot and all the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.